am. So
Hello.
we
Are
should.
we live or is that not
We are
live?
live. We got 7 viewers
Yay!
already. Holy cow.
Wow.
Hi, folks. Thanks for joining us.
Hello. Yeah. Oh. Okay. I got to figure out how to get the chat to work outside this video. But hello. Welcome. This is the I don't even know what we'll call this. This is the Wolfspell uh live chat while Shel draws awesome wolves, and I tell you a little bit about Wolfspell and maybe answer some questions that are in the chat. The first question, however, is for Shel. So you want to introduce yourself and tell us about your favorite thing about drawing wolves?
Folks. So yeah, I'm Shel. I am an illustrator. I've been illustrating tabletop RPGs for a long time now, and I am a huge sword and sorcery nerd. So wolves are definitely part of my toolbox, if you want to, my palette. You can see I've got a page up. I've been doing some warm-up wolves just to get myself back into the zone with them because we're queuing up this awesome project. I think the thing I love most about wolves, I'm definitely a dog person. My last dog I had for 16 years, and I just adopted another rescue. I like them wolf-sized. I like them fluffy and gray, and even when I get a dog that frankly looks like a wolf, they look nothing like wolves. I was actually just talking with Eppy as we were warming up for this. The more I look at these reference photos of wolves, the more alien they become. I'm so used to looking at dogs. So wolves are kind of this window into something that's just so different from what I'm used to as someone who hangs out around dogs. And they still have so much character and so much personality. It's definitely a whole person in there in some ways, you know? And I think that's probably the most exciting thing about them. They're surprising and alien, and yet I can still really feel connected to them in a lot of ways. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna start drawing this black and white portrait of a wolf because it's so moody, and then
Yeah.
we'll
That's
probably move
good.
on to a couple of the
Well,
reference images.
one of the things that we had talked about was the the I definitely went into this whole project thinking this will be the most metal thing I've ever done, and then the more time I spend looking at and reading about wolves, the less moody and hardcore they feel, and the more goofy and just wacky they are.
They're real.
Um,
They're real goofy. It's
yeah.
wonderful.
So, okay, we got another question here. This one is also from Emily.
Thank you so
She
much, Emily.
mentions, yeah, our uh, plant in the audience there. She mentions One Winter's Dew, which is the story that inspired this game. So, One Winter's Dew. Well, Emily's question is, can you tell us about how writing it led to Wolfspell and how they relate? So, One Winter's Dew is a story that I wrote for the second issue of Worlds Without Master, and the story is about these two sisters who are adventurers and kind of at the end of their adventuring career. They're a little bit on the older side, and they, because of a long-standing family feud, they get kind of crossed up in different oaths to avenge their brother or not avenge their brother. And their way of untangling these oaths are to go and turn themselves into wolves and avenge their brother as wolves. And the story, I'm not going to give away the ending. If you want to know the ending, you have to read it. It doesn't go particularly well for them, but they have a romp along the way, I guess. The writing that story was interesting because it kept pinging the back of my designer brain. Like the whole time I was writing that story, part of my brain was very jealously screaming, why aren't you making this a game? Like, why are you bothering writing it? Why not turn it into a game? So I also needed a game for that exact same issue, and I thought that I could kill two birds with one stone here. And I designed Wolfspell to be the sort of game that one might be able to run the story One Winter's Due in it. And the yeah, like it started with the story, and when I got done with it, I just couldn't let go of the game idea. Um, this sort of central conceit here, where in the middle of One Winter's Due, they turned into wolves, and they're suddenly at odds with the fact that they're wolves. You know, you don't. Well, they don't know that they're about to turn into wolves, but then once they do, they don't have this like. Uh, it's a completely alien experience to them. They're interpreting the world through senses that they've never had before. Their body is moving in ways that it's never moved before, and there's kind of this joy in the beginning, and then they have to go off and attempt their task and live out the grim life of wolves in the north. And I wanted to capture that in the game, so I wrote Wolfspell. And when it came time to put out this issue, I got Shel to do the artwork for One Winter's Due. I had been a fan of Shel's for a while and wanted a good project. I remember I wasn't at the point where I could pay anyone to do a cover for Worlds yet. But even at that point, I was like, I'm going to get Shel to do my first illustrated cover. And you did. So thank you very much for that.
It was a super blast, but drawing the wolves was a super blast as well. They were really, really like a fun challenge to create a world where the wolves felt like people, like illustrations without humans in them. Was really fun. And like
it was gorgeous. Like and so around that time is when I started thinking about putting it out. I had written the game and realized the size of it, which was a little over 2,000 words, and that I'd already done some experimenting with games in other formats, like my business card games and whatnot. And I realized that could possibly fit on an album. And that was like way back then, that was the thing I wanted to do with it. And also I knew that I wanted Shel as to do the cover art for it. But other projects that were in the way between then and now, but that's where we are.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for a while.
Yeah. It's I am really filled with incredible nervous energy that we're getting to this point. But I am psyched about this because the game itself is I'm trying to think of like the best way to describe this, but I think our audience would be familiar with Apocalypse World. So I'm going to start with that. It is powered by the Apocalypse. You roll 2 dice and you check on a little chart to determine, your good result, your mixed result, and your bad result. But the twist there is that the 2 dice you roll are a wolf die and a blood die. And instead of adding them together, you subtract the lower die from the larger die. After you make the roll 2 6-sided dice, and you subtract the lower result from the larger result, and that's what you compare to the chart. So the dice are telling you whether you're going to be more wolfy or and sort of embrace your wolf-like instincts to do the things that wolves are wont to do, to look at the world through the senses of the wolf. Or if the blood die is the higher result, then you're going to end up thinking more like a human, doing more human-like things, such as changing the world around you so that you can get advantage, or thinking more, I don't want to say complex thoughts. I don't want to be a humanist or a wolfist here, but a speciesist. But
Anthropocentric.
yes.
Working for a
But
counter-anthropocentric approach.
yes, exactly. So if you're doing Behold the World, which is the move that lets you look out and see the world, and you roll well as a wolf, you get to ask questions about what you can smell and what you can see and what you can taste. But if you roll a high blood die, then you're asking questions of like, who's in control here, or where am I most advantaged, and those sorts of human concerns. And that's the main way that game works. I'm going to look at the chat real quick here because there are some questions piling up. I'm going to try and nail some of these. All right. So what's the details on the planned format? Okay. So that's a good question. The album is going to be a trifold album. So if it had records in it, and it will not, because I'm not a record producer, I'm not a music producer, I'm a game designer. But if it did, you can imagine it opening up and having two sleeves on either side where you can have a record in each side and then a section in the middle the same size. So it'll be a little bit like the GM screens of old, except each panel is going to be 12 inches by 12 inches. So it's going to be 3 square feet of art on one side, and on the other side, 3 square feet of game, plus a little bit of extra art, because as it turns out, that's how it fits. So all of the game is mainly going to be on one side, and the other side is going to be this glorious metal album. Well, I shouldn't qualify it as metal, because I think we're epic album, I think, is what we're looking for, right? Like something a little proggy. I don't want, it could definitely be metal, but
like there won't be a burning church, there won't be studded leather, but there will be maybe some historically accurate studded leather, but not
right,
not some Rob Halford style studded leather. But,
no.
But it will still feel, I think, epic. If you do know your metal albums, we're looking for somewhere between Tyr album cover and an Emperor album cover, I think. The blighted frost of the north, and the epic landscape, and the epic journey, and or somewhere between an Emperor album cover and then like a power metal album cover, where you can really tell that there's a story happening, despite maybe the focus on the weather. Mountains, trees. I like trees. You know you're going to get trees from me. There'll be some good trees. For sure. And
so
in motion.
That actually hits at some of the... there's a further question down that's if the album could have legit music, what would it have on it? And I think I think that's what we're describing, right? We're some pretty proggy metal. I think it would be definitely, there would be a song on it that had different movements, different parts to it, right? Like there's a song with a parenthetical in the title. That's least the kind of music that would be there.
Yeah, it would be like maybe a 4-song, 2-hour-long album.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. There was a question about retailer level and how will international work. So I have I'm definitely going to have a level for people who have purchased, wish to purchase a bunch of them all at once to save on shipping and whatnot. I have a local store here. It's a local used bookstore that is going to store and ship them for me. I'm still waiting on a particular quote, but this is someone who has assured me that they do, but they do a lot of international shipping as is right now. So they're the same people that the bakers use for Apocalypse World and whatnot. So if you have experience with that, it'll be very similar to that. All right. What made you decide to print the game on an album? That is a good question. Okay, so there's this thing. The hobbies. All right, so I heard. I think this was an interview with Michael Moorcock at one point, and I'm not. I might be misquoting someone here, so don't quote me on quoting Michael Moorcock. But discussing why fantasy and science fiction appeared in all of the like metal and rock of the 60s or 70s and early 80s, and why that, why those two seem to be so bound together in our collective consciousness. Like if you think about D&D, where D&D came from, we don't think about that as a particularly rock and roll thing, or at least that's not how I remember it from when I was a kid. But nowadays we definitely tie it into, Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath, and then the music that hit upon the same sources of influence. And one of the reasons why this existed, it turns out, is that when you're on a tour bus and you're in a band, you get bored and you read things. And the cheapest things you can find to read are these sci-fi and fantasy novels that are on racks and gas stations and dime stores and whatnot. So they would just buy these cheap novels and read them, and then that would have this influence on their lyrics, because they're going along trying to figure out what they're going to sing about next. And so my childhood is sort of bound up in all of that, like the music, the role-playing games, the stories, and all that. And I am not able to extract them from each other in my brain. Like I can't listen to Dio and not think that I want to play a role-playing game. And I can't, I look at covers of role-playing games and start thinking about the music that I think is appropriate for it. Not appropriate for playing while you're playing the game, because that can sometimes be intrusive, but just to get you in the mood, or just something that I associate with it. So I wanted to just kind of take a step in that direction. I love this idea that maybe somewhere in some alternate world, there is a band called Wolfspell who has a game on their liner notes that they are that they put out, and they have a bunch of fans that are like bought the album, this dual disc album, and they open it up and saw the liner notes, and they're like, what the hell is this? And started playing, and maybe discovered adventure that way. So yeah, it seemed like and there's also a little bit of jealousy built into that. I am not a musically inclined person. I enjoy music, but I was in a band once very briefly in the early 90s, and we were booed off stage, and that was entirely my fault. And so
Thank you all for asking these questions.
This is
I'm learning
as close
so
as
much
I get
right
to being
now.
in a band, is what's happening here. Yeah. So we've got some good comments. You have a gorgeous wolf going there. Wolf face emoji and fire emoji. Paula's. And okay. So this is a good question. What happens on doubles? When you earlier on, I was saying that you subtract the lower from the higher. When you roll a double, that result is 0, right? So in the game, all of the result tables start with 1 and go upward. And if you roll doubles, then you get to decide whether you want the bad 1 result for being a wolf, or the bad 1 result for being a human. So you get to look at that and make that decision about, basically the idea is that your character really, really wants to be a wolf in this moment, but can't shake the human insecurities that keep them from being a wolf, or they really, really want to be a human in this moment and can't shake the instincts, the feral instincts of the wolf that drives them to do something else. So it's not good when you roll doubles. That is what happens when you roll doubles.
One thing I like about that, though, is that like you still have some agency. And when I talk to people about Powered by the Apocalypse games, it's, one of the highlights is that when something goes wrong, it's interesting. Maybe you still get to make a choice. And I think that's a really neat way to bring that into Wolfspell. Like you still as a player have agency in the moment where you roll the absolute worst possible thing you can roll.
Yeah.
And so you get to make an interesting choice and you get interesting consequences, even as everything goes to shit.
And you want that to happen every so often in a game, right? Like you want to have a moment where you awkwardly do something more human than you wanted or more wolfy than you wanted. All right, so there's a question here that's, how much will the album version of the game cost to support? And I'm not entirely sure what the question is there. The peripherals, what you need for the game is you'll have the album, and then you just need a pair of dice that you can tell apart, and then probably just some writing implements. But I'm not entirely sure that that's what is meant by support here. So maybe a little clarification. If it's a question about shipping, I don't know shipping prices just yet. I'm waiting to get a quote back from my contact, but I can't answer that in the moment. Well, how much does it cost? Well, that's something I'm going to figure out once I find out what the shipping prices are. But it's going to be all right. Yes. How much will it cost to get the game? It will be between $25 and $30. We'll find out more when I find out what the actual shipping is. But with that, you get this gorgeous trifold album that you can hang up. I know I'm going to put it up on my wall. I'm pretty excited about that. I just got a bunch of new walls to hang stuff on. So,
yeah, I'm definitely making the art with the understanding that some people will be just displaying the art and taking it down to play. For me, one of the games that really inspired me towards that is Fall of Magic, where it's fun to play that game, but also what if I just hung the scroll on my wall?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's a good use of that game as well, especially if I've played it a few times. And I can hang it up and just bring it down when guests are like, "What the hell is that?" So if I can hit that same note with Wolfspell, that's where I'm looking.
Yeah. All right. So I got a churlish question here from Eric Farmer about any extras.
I'm glad he liked that.
And yeah. So it's the album. That's it. If you have issue 2 of Worlds Without Master, the game will be expanded upon a little bit. I will have a few more spells that are sort of when you play the game. When you start playing the game, the first thing you decide is the spell that you're under that caused you to become wolves, and that determines what you need to accomplish in order to break the spell. I'm going to add a few more there. Also, when you make characters in the game, you ask this sort of questions like, who amongst us does this best describe? And in the issue 2, there are 5 of those questions, and I think I add 3 or 4 more. And then finally, there's going to be a little expansion on sort of how to run the game, how to be in the game. The role of the game master is called the Winter. So there's a little bit more wintering advice there. And a few things that you can pick from while you're playing the game if you get caught in a moment where you're like, I don't know what to have happen next. All right. We just pick from this chart here, just to keep the flow going. The game itself, although it lends itself to being a dungeon master screen, right? Like you can set it up in front of you. I don't know. I would be curious to see if people actually use it that way. I would need a taller chair, because I think most of those screens are 8 inches, and this is going to be
12 is pretty
12
high.
inches, but yeah.
But if you want to sit on a phone booth, phone book, and impress your players.
I have a special pillow that I sit on, so that raises me up a little bit there. Okay, so another thing about the revisions I should point out is that there are a few of the moves I'm going through and rewriting to make them kind of clearer. There's one in particular, the perilous move, that I think people I think it needed like a rewrite to make it very clear about what's happening in that particular move. So but aside from that, it's going to be pretty much the game that you've played before, if you've played Wolfspell before. Yeah, I'm looking at the questions again. I think I'm caught up on them.
Nice.
I like your wolf.
Thank you.
That was fast. I was concentrating on talking, and I wasn't paying attention to this thing unfolding before my very eyes.
It's a warm-up wolf. It just emerges from the forest, and there you are. I will actually mix up what wolf I'm drawing, but that was fun. Fun wolf. I'm using a new program, so you can see me literally learning it as I go. Thank you all for your patience.
Nice.
Now I'm going to draw the wolf that Eppy decided was his eidolon.
Yes. Good old gray beard. Or green beard.
Green beard, Eppy. Gosh. So I'm actually going to move this over on top of the other wolf so everything's all nice and nestled in.
I'm going to give a quick shout out to Hourly Wolves bot on Twitter, because that is something that I did not know I needed so much in my life. It's just an hourly wolf delivered to me.
Just a heck ton of wolves. Just a bunch of them. Those bots are great just to like get you in the zone. It's definitely a great reference if you are looking for an eidolon or something when you are trying to describe your wolf when you play Wolfspell.
Yeah. So I've said this in other places, but my favorite rule in this entire game, and as luck would have it, I have the game here in front of me, so I am going to bring it up. And I have this rule highlighted, so that's great. There's just this moment you go through character creation where you answer this question of like, who does this best describe? And people, you read out these descriptions that are like, all right, I got to go a page earlier to find that description. Many have tested my sword arm and now await to meet vengeance upon me in the afterlife. Or I am witness to stranger worlds than most. The arcane and preternatural are to me as the wolves and weather are to the farmer. And so you do this sort of like, here are your characters that you have been adventuring with this whole time. These very human. I'm going to say human throughout because that is how I originally envisioned it. But certainly, if you want to play a bunch of elves that turn into wolves, I'm not going to stop you.
No, live your dream. That sounds epic.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But you were these non-wolf adventurers who have lived storied lives who now must turn into wolves, and so you spend some time deciding who is what kind of non-wolf adventurer. Like, not what kind, but like who has what legends written about them, or who can be said to know the hearts of men or whatever. But once you get done doing that, the very next thing that happens is that it says you are, well, not the very next thing, but you shift into wolves, and then it says, now you are wolves. Describe your coat, your size, your scent, and your voice. And that always brings everything to a dead stop, but it's a good dead stop. It's a nice, like, ominous dead stop, because everyone just, they're like, wait a minute, that's right. Now I got to describe a wolf. And my wolf can have a smell. That's important, right? And the voice. So yeah, it's my favorite point in all the game. It's all downhill from there.
I don't
It's not my
feel
favorite.
quite the same, but that is a very good
Yeah.
moment in the game. No,
I do. My other favorite. Oh, go on.
I just really like anything that makes people think with like more than one sense when they're thinking about their character. And so, like, what do you sound like? What do you smell like? Or fun questions. I mean, hey, use them on your humanoid characters, but definitely necessary for wolves.
Yes. And another fun moment in the game that I enjoy is the first time a wolf gets hurt. Because when that list is read out, people are like, oh, uh-oh. This is serious here. That's when the game gets metal.
Yeah. Do you want to share a sample from that list?
Sneaky? Yeah. I can, yeah, spoilers, but here I'm going to read it off to you. Gonna go a little deeper into this. All right, so here are your 3 options when you get hurt. Gotta zoom in because I got old man eyes. I don't have the eyes of a wolf. Or maybe I do. I don't know how.
I sort of assume they're farsighted.
Yeah. Option 1, each scar is a lesson learned. Describe how your wolf is permanently marred, and then either gain 2 feral or lose 1 feral. Once you have suffered this harm, you may not suffer it again. I should explain feral, but I'll do that in a moment. Option 2, the toll of a careless life. Describe how your wolf lost either an eye or a limb. Once you've suffered this harm, you may not suffer it again. Option 3, meat and bone. Describe how your wolf has suffered a fatal blow and passes. So there you go.
That's it. That's all you get.
That's it. That's what you got. You got those 3 options, and each time you pick one, you can't pick any other. You can't pick it again, except for the last one, which means you can't pick any other. But anyways, the point is,
it ends your wolf.
Yes, this is not a game of hit points. Feral is the only real stat in the game. Feral is always added to your wolf die, and you gain feral by doing particularly wolfy things. You can gain feral by grooming with the pack. You can gain feral by wrestling with other wolves. And then as you adventure, there's other moments where you can gain feral. As your feral goes up, you become more effective because you get better. You're more likely to roll a high wolf result that way, but you get less and less likely to do more human-like things. And when it comes to the end of the game, you might be in trouble because you might want to return back to civilization. I'm not saying you do, but you might.
It's possible.
Yeah.
You might miss it.
Yes. Yes. Bodega Cat Spell. That would definitely follow-up album. That's from Eric Farmer. Yeah, Bodega Cat is another wonderful Twitter bot to follow, or I think it's on Instagram as well. There's also one, I think I follow an hourly possum one as well, because you got to have some possums in your life.
It's good to mix it up too.
Yeah. So there's a question about Monkey Dome. Yes. Long live Monkey Dome. So how much of Monkey Dome's DNA is noticeable in Wolfspell? So if you're listening along, you don't know what the hell a Monkey Dome is and why it has to do with wolves. Monkey Dome is the post-apocalyptic role-playing game that we made in a week that turned out to be the central structure for Swords Without Master. So the DNA from Monkey Dome comes through Swords Without Master and into Wolfspell. I should say what Swords Without Master is, right? There might
Yeah,
be people
probably.
listening that don't know what that is.
Somewhere.
Swords Without Master is a sword and sorcery game that came out in the 3rd issue of Worlds Without Master, so the issue right after Wolfspell. But it was designed before Wolfspell, and there was like a free version that was out before Wolfspell, so it predates it in some ways. In Swords Without Master, you roll 2 dice before you do anything. 1 die is your glum die, and 1 die is your jovial die. And the higher of the 2 dice determines the tone in which you must narrate your character in. And that part of the that comes from Monkeydom, and that part of the DNA is cooked right into the mechanics of Wolfspell here. But instead of just instructing the player to narrate in this tone, that's left more open. Well, all right, I don't want to go too deep into design philosophy here, but I will say that instead of instructing the player to do it, it restricts the options available to the player, right? So you roll a high wolf die, then the things you can decide on, the things you can choose, are going to be more wolfy style things. One area where that's very evident is when you face perilous things. Wolves are smarter than humans when it comes, or at least that's what I'm saying with this game. So the wolves will protect themselves and protect each other, and will retreat from danger that powers them, whereas humans, particularly human adventurers, will just barrel headstrong into the danger. And you may want to have both those options on the table, but you don't. You have to obey what the dice are. The dice will tell you which ones are available to you. Yeah. Reading down this list again, someone else is a big fan of that moment of transformation. Yes, it is. It's great. The whole game kind of revels in this. Like, I think that's. I said earlier where, like, I definitely have an urge to be metal about all this, but also you turn into puppers who who wrestle with each other and groom each other and have these, as you can see on the screen, these wacky expressions, and that's an important part of being a wolf. Like, I didn't want to make the game, and in the story that the game was based on, One Winter's Due, in neither one of them did I want to, just embrace kind of fantasy myths about wolves. I wanted to, like, hit upon what actually being a wolf would be like. I have no practical experience being a wolf, though I did grow up in somewhat rural Ohio, and we did run with wild dogs there, so maybe but a little bit of experience.
Hold on, we're going to dig into that after this question is answered. Keep going, and then we'll come back to running with wild dogs. just bank that one for later.
Yeah. So, but the transformation, to, you couldn't, I didn't want the game to just say, and now you're a wolf. Now do all the things that wolves give you the powers to do. I wanted the game to put you in a spot where you had to think like a wolf, where you had to restructure the things that you're interpreting. Like, you roll a wolf on your senses, and you're like, now I need to know what things smell like. I need, you can't write a letter and leave it behind for someone, but you can mark your territory and leave a letter behind. Or more specifically, what were you going to say?
I say for a wolf, for another wolf.
Yeah, for a wolf, yes. Or you can howl, which is another lovely mechanic in the game where if you howl, You can your voice reaches a great distance. Obviously, any wolf with feral has to roll the dice, and they have to get a non-wolf result if they want to not howl with you. Otherwise, they have to howl, and everyone who's howling has to tell us what they're saying, because there's a statement in that howl. You can't just be like, okay, I'll howl too. You have to shout something that the whole world of wolves can hear. I kind of love that about the game. All right, we got a question about how much more chance for grooming as a pack will we have in the new edition? Right. Yes. This is so grooming as a pack is important for a wolf's health. They get rid of pests and whatnot. They clean wounds if they have them, and they also help establish some of the order and relationship that they have in the pack. That's a thing. And then also, if you happen to be players predisposed to sexy time games, grooming is an opportunity. I think it's going to have the exact same opportunity that it has now. But now that you've asked the question, I will consider it. I mean, you can always groom as a pack whenever, and there are definitely times where you want to do it when there are injured pack members, or if you want to get the feral scores in the pack up a little bit. That's a thing that you can do while grooming in the game. But yeah, I'll look into that and keep that in mind, because that is actually, I will be honest with you, that is a fairly recent development in the Wolfspell games that I have played in. I have the previous games that I played did not have quite as much wolf romance going on, and I want to enable that. So yeah, there we are. You made an old man awkward. Good.
So, running with the wild dogs, Eppy?
Yes.
Tell us more. Just like a pack around your neighborhood?
Oh, yes. So, where I grew up in Ohio, there was it was a suburban neighborhood that was placed in the middle of forest and fields. There was one road leading in. If you envision like the map of the neighborhood is a little bit just like a tree, where there's like that one trunk that goes in and then a bunch of dead end branches. They're the dead end roads of the neighborhood. The houses in the neighborhood were situated next to each other like they would be in any kind of suburban neighborhood, but there was no like, there wasn't even like a gas station for miles around. We couldn't ride our bikes to any sort of store or anything like that. Everything that was around us was either field or forest. And the dogs in the neighborhood, there were a few dogs that were kept on leashes, and those were like Doberman pinchers. I remember them because they scared the crap out of me. But almost all the other dogs in the neighborhood were just let run wild, and as were us, the kids. And yes, I totally could have started a howl, and we would just run around the neighborhood with this pack of dogs that followed us. Like each dog belonged to a home that belonged to one of the kids, but they, that was more like a social contract than anything else. There was no enforcement of that. Yeah, it was just that dog knew where it could go to eat, and that was it. So yeah, we just spent a lot of time. It was the 80s, and it was exactly what all of our pop culture says about the 80s, that we were riding BMX bikes, and we had a bunch of dogs chase us around, sometimes for good and sometimes for ill, depending on what was happening at the time and how the dogs were feeling. So yeah, it's not Mowgli, but it's
Well,
it was an experience.
I feel like just another small piece of the puzzle of how this game came to be just slid into space for me.
Yeah. So we played Wolfspell. Was about 6 months ago now. Was that
Yeah,
the
September, so 4 months, I guess. 5.
5? Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, and that was a fun game. That was I'm trying to remember if the other players had they ever role played before, or was that the first time?
They had both played like a couple of Dungeon World games with me when we were like hanging out drunk. We were like, what could we
Right.
do with this evening? But
Yeah.
this was definitely the most I'm gonna call it an introspective mode of play. Uh where you're sort of, thinking not just about, if your character's cool or not, but what the story is and
Yeah.
what it all means and so forth. That I'd seen them do, and they really got into it.
Yeah, it was I mean, yeah, they were well primed for it too, but yeah, I always love I guess going back to that transformation bit, I love watching people make their human adventurer and then uh to see how they reflect that in their wolves. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
you there's something about like you start thinking, "Oh, I'm you know, a big because you have to hold on to something, right? If I
yeah,
say, "Okay, you're a wolf, what do you smell like?" You're lost unless you're thinking, "Well, I am kind of a sneaky thiefy wolf. I was a sneaky thiefy human. So what would a sneaky wolf thing smell like, right? Like
yeah,
what what does a wolf that sneaks around and tries to stay up when what do they roll in? Do they roll in pine needles so that they smell like the forest or is there another way I can personify that sort of sneakiness? And yeah, I always dug that aspect of it. I was just thinking about that when looking at Greenbeard here,
yeah.
and now I don't know how to reverse engineer that. I don't know what what kind of adventurer was Greenbeard before they turned into a wolf. I
I
mean,
don't know, but they definitely have a taste for swamp water.
yeah,
That's for sure.
or that's or that's a look of that's they're trying to get the taste off the tongue. They're shaking their head in the wind or something
Yeah.
like
Uh,
that was that.
because I've restrained myself this long, I'm now going to talk about my dog,
Oh, please
who
do. Yes.
fully, whenever we go out to chase tennis balls in the backyard, just wants to chew on the tennis balls and then roll them in the dirt and then chew on them some more. Um, and will occasionally put one down and just sort of smack his lips for a while, as if this is like a
Yeah.
delicious and gourmet experience for him. And I wonder if this wolf has been indulging in a similar thing where it's like, well, I'll just eat a bunch of schmutz and
Yeah.
live my wolf truth. It also seems kind of wizardy though,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
having a green beard as a wolf. Doing anything to sort of change your appearance as a wolf seems very wizardy to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I do. I think that like I like the curiosity angle though. I like the that this is a person who in their human life got into their adventures just because they couldn't let go of like oh what is in that cave? I mean,
Yeah.
I can hear it and it doesn't sound good, but I gotta find out. I gotta go in there, right? Like if I
What?
don't, who will?
Yeah. What does this taste like? Only I can find out.
Yeah. What does this taste like to a wolf? That's the um that's the question there.
Would they turn human again if they had that kind of approach to wolfdom?
That's a good question. Right? So I mentioned feral, which increases your ability to be wolfy in the game. It always adds to your wolf die. And every one of the spells that you're under ends with a roll, one final roll to see if you could turn back to being human. And the more feral you've accumulated, the less likely you're going to be able to roll and be a human. And you really want to roll. I mean, so I've definitely played with people who, as they played, they're like, I am 100% cool with this character living the rest of their life as a wolf, right? Like
That seems in character. That
yeah.
seems, yeah.
It's not a threat, you know. If you're like, I hope you live the rest of your life as a wolf, okay. Like, yeah, there's things I don't have to worry about then. I mean, there's new things I have to worry about, but at least they'll be refreshing and new and not the same old things. Um, but you don't want to roll midline in that role. That role you want to have a clear winner, the human or the wolf. Because if you roll midline, you're gonna end up a wolf who's a human or a human that's a wolf, and that's neither way is that fun. So yeah, it's fun watching people as they play the game get more and more into the wolf side of things, and then like, oh no. Now each spell has its own like here's the things you can do to I guess make it easier for you to become a human again. So you can in if you play out several when I say spell, that's the same thing as a scenario, right? Like this is uh the setup. This is the thing that I should read some of those. So let me bring one of those up. Good radio.
It's sort of the curse that you fall under, or the accident that happens. It's the reason you have become wolves.
Yes, yes. So sometimes it's something that's just straightforward, like the task before you is one not suited for the civilized, so you turn to dark magics and shift your flesh to a form more suitable. And in this one, if you complete that task, then you get a bonus on turning back into human because you've done the thing that the human set out to do. But there's another one that's for generations long past, this curse has been upon you and your kin. This very night you shall lope out as children of Fenris and drive the rival clan from the Vale. And that one, you need to drive out the rival clan. And the more of those you drive out as wolves, the more likely you are to become human again. There's ones where you relics of an ancient cult plundered from an old queen's tomb carry with them a savage curse that can only be cleansed in distant holy fires. I cannot remember which one. Oh, you tried one of the new ones.
Yeah, we did a new one.
Yeah, where uh this is actually my favorite of the new ones, where the curse is that a pack of wolves, which is what you call a bunch of wolves, you call them a pack. I have to remember that. A pack of wolves have cast a spell to become you as human to accomplish some task, and you're stuck in their bodies while that's happening. Which, yeah, no, that was a great, great
Oh,
final confrontation in that one.
yeah. We were on the docks. They were pulling them off of a boat. It was great. They knew who we were too. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
They saw us coming. They knew the stakes were high, and yeah, we had a real showdown.
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, once they were driven from our bodies, I think all of us successfully became human again.
I think so, actually. I think
Uh,
some uh yearned for the
yes,
the life of the wolf, but
yeah, and yet
yeah.
rolled into humanity.
Look at
So looking at this wolf also looks like it's been rolling in a bunch of red dirt or clay. Um,
that.
and I'm reminded there's a kind of bird called the lammergeier, and it's just a black and white bird, but it always looks like it has pink or orange throat feathers because it just combs this red earth through its feathers. And they all do this, and we don't know why, and it doesn't seem to be something that they learn in the nest.
Huh.
We just don't know how they evolved to be like, gotta rub on the clay mask, folks. But I wonder if
Wow.
this wolf also has been dying itself in the years.
That's kind of awesome. Yeah. That
Uh,
that definitely makes me think more wizardy, or at least a wolf that is might even be regretting the transformation.
Yeah,
This is like,
this isn't what I wanted.
I was a
This
clown in a previous life.
does seem a little shamanistic, or like some sort of like magical thing to do,
Yeah.
even in wolf context. So
So, oh yeah, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna ask, like, when did you start doing the research to sort of be like, what are the wolf parts I want to bring into this game?
Well, that was one when I started writing One Winter's Due. I was like, okay, I want to do this right. Um, I love saying that because it implies that there are other things I set out to do where I'm like, I'm cool if I do it wrong, and actually there are, but that okay, so it makes sense. I wanted to do this right. uh, and that was actually an eye opener for me. That was the time that I learned that the whole alpha thing was a load of horseshit. That was,
Load of bunk.
yeah, that even the guy who came up with it's like, no, this is wrong. This is incredibly wrong. And it changed how I approached the game. When I first started thinking that, oh, this would be an easy game. You would have like these rules for figuring out who's the alpha or whatever. And I don't know about easy game, but like, that would be it. And then I was like, no, these rules have to be about how the pack takes care of each other. These rules have to be about how you look out for each other and uh, hold on to those relationships. Something more complex than, again, like you set out to be. This is what you expect from a metal album, and actually, that metaphor works. I think because I have found quite often that metal albums will draw me in with artwork, and I'd be like, yeah, this is going to be about this simple thing, and then they're like, haha, it's not. We're gonna sit down, young lad. We have a tale to tell you.
An important story.
Yes.
Warriors of
Uh,
old.
I remember just the first time actually paying attention to, back when I was really young, really young, back in my teens, uh, and first paid attention to Metallica lyrics, and I was like, uh, the early stuff where they talk about, you know, uh, horrible things of war or capital punishment and things. And I'm like, whoa, hold on here. This is this isn't just badass stuff. This is they're trying to say something here. What's going on?
Yeah, they have a message.
Yeah. Um but the yeah, so early on I was also, here's the thing, and I think you uh probably enjoy the same thing, but when I have this moment, I'm like, oh, I'm going to write a story or a game about wolves, then that gives me an excuse to watch documentaries about wolves and read books about wolves. it is
Yeah.
it is like one of the greatest values of being a game designer is you can be like, oh, I like this thing. I'd like to make a game about it. I get to make my whole life about it for the next 6 months. That's great. It's also a curse. It's, but it's, uh, but yeah, yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, no, I definitely know that instinct. Like for sure.
Mhm.
My friends and I call it procrastinate research, when you just end up so far
Yes.
down the rabbit hole and you're like, no, 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 this is for something and it's so great. And you have to sort of find the balance between like getting really knowledgeable about a thing you probably don't need all of the knowledge about, but like it's fun and it's satisfying and it will make your thing a little bit better.
Right.
Because yeah, my instinct is to be like, it's time to learn, put everything else away.
Yeah,
Totally
and
agree with
it's exactly that where you're like, well, this book is about something very similar to what I'm going to do, so I'm just going to read it and it'll inform me, and I'll just say that it's worth it.
Yeah.
Um,
We'll just
and
assume this is a good call because I want to do it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah.
So we're reaching, I think, the end of the first or the end of an hour.
Sure.
Does that feel like a good time to wrap up, or should we close up maybe with some of our favorite metal songs about wolves, or
Yeah.
any songs about wolves?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's yeah, because we should embrace the fact that there's a non-existent metal album or any album in this, or two of them actually. It's a 2-disc set, so we're talking about a whole evening's worth of entertainment.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. So I mean, there's Lock Up the Wolves, which is Dio. I'm going to go to Dio in the beginning. Anytime somebody's like, think of some music, they have to say, and don't think of Dio, or otherwise that's where I'm going to go.
I just think of
Uh,
Dio. I'm fine with this.
yeah, yeah, that's good. I'm trying. All right, I'm trying to think of like, or specifically the music that I'd want to listen to setting up for this. The Tear album by Black Sabbath, which is not Ozzy and not Dio, but uh, Tony Martin is the singer on that album. But it's a lot of Valhalla and Tear and you know, when the north winds blow, uh, which I'm almost certain I listened to a lot of it when I was writing this stuff way back then, 5 years ago.
Nice.
Uh, what you got?
I so I go two different directions. If we're going into if we're talking about the sound of the most epic Wolfspell game you could ever play, then it would definitely be soundtrack for me by Sonata Arctica, because they already have 4 songs about wolves, I think.
Nice.
Um, and so if we're gonna open the one that gets you going, the one that gets you pumped to be a wolf, that gets you thinking about wolf concerns, that's definitely The Cage, which is about a wolf that's been hunted and captured and doesn't understand and wants to get out and is swearing vengeance against its human captors.
Nice.
And I feel like that's very relatable at certain points in Wolfspell. Um,
Yes.
and then if you want to get into sort of like, oh, you have to look after your pack, you have to think about what's right for everybody, you have to try and look after everybody's safety, then the song you want for that is The Last Amazing Graze, which is about a wolf realizing that they're too old to lead the pack anymore and they need to pass the mantle along to the younger wolves who can, keep everybody safe and fed and achieve the goals of the pack a little bit more successfully. And it's a little sad, but it's a little epic.
That's great.
Yeah. But if you want to get into sort of I love the concept that the spells, especially having played the one where the wolves come for you,
Yeah.
like that's so much my jam. Um, but if you want to listen to an album that sort of talks about some of those, themes of vengeance and eternally looping kind of curses and such, like I kill your son and then his sister grows up and she kills my son and then his child
Yeah.
grows up and kills her child, and like that stuff. One of my favorite albums for that kind of storytelling is by the band Tear, and they have an album called Land, and it's very much about sort of like, what are the Eddas and the myths telling us? What do these stories have? What lessons can be learned from them? What is the moral in these sort of amoral tales of vengeance and chaos? I think those are very in the same feel as Wolfspell when we're
Yeah.
thinking about like, what are you getting out of this game? What kind of stories are you telling, and how do those stories feel?
Yeah. It's definitely, it doesn't, it doesn't have to be, but it definitely has this like, look how foolish you humans are now that you've turned into wolves. Like,
Yeah.
like,
What do your human concerns mean now
yes.
in this form, in this place?
Yeah.
And like, how will you reconcile that now as a wolf? But I think it also asks the question, once you are a human again, what is that? How does that feel? now that
Yeah.
you've seen humanity from the eyes of a wolf.
Yeah. Where do
So,
you go from there?
yeah, what next? But yeah, I think this wolf has become a wolf
Yeah.
as well, and
Well,
I've achieved wolf scale
thank
of
you so much
absolutely
for
my
doing
pleasure.
this. Yeah, and thank you everyone who joined us in the chat.
Yeah, thanks for your questions.
Be sure to sign up for the. I should mention the URL, although the URL is just a mess. Maybe we'll just put a link somewhere.
Yeah, check out Eppy's Twitter, and Eppy's going to tweet all of the important URLs.
Yeah. But yeah, be prepared because that's the Wolfspell Kickstarter will be upon us and gone in 2 weeks. So that moon is going to disappear, and while you're watching it disappear, you may lose your opportunity.
There it will go.
All right.
Well, thank you all so much. And yeah, follow us on Twitter. I'm Portable City. Eppy's Epidiah. Presumably you got here through Twitter, but hey, if you didn't, there you
Yep.
are. And you can learn everything you need to know at worldswithoutmaster.com/wolfspell. And there's a mailing list that you should get on because it's going to alert you the second that moon hits full and the Kickstarter launches, which you don't want to miss. You want to
Yes.
be there right at the beginning. Thank you all so much. And yeah, if you want to watch me paint more wolves or draw more wolves, you want to subscribe to my YouTube channel, which
Yes.
you're watching right now. So grab that as well. Thanks again, and have a good night. Bye, folks.
Bye.